Hi everybody out there and einen schönen guten Tag here from Germany. Quick update to my channel. I wanted to, before I show the artwork, what I'm doing, I wanted to make like a introductory video where I talk about a little bit what we're going to do. And I hope this is a little bit more engaging with the audience, that's more appealing for the watchers and listeners. Okay, what we're gonna do today, as you can already see in the background, this is a trailer of Diablo 4, which is coming out, made by Blizzard, and they are always making exceptional render videos. It's cinematic, and we are going to paint and draw one creature out of it. The name of this creature is Lilith, who's going to be the villain in this video game, as far as I'm concerned. And we are gonna combine watercolors with a basic coating, and gonna use colored pencils for the details and like the layering above the ground color. And I recommend everybody to see the trailer for Diablo 4 because it's a 9 minutes long video, and it's really worth seeing. And in this video you will see the reference I used, and you will be able to compare how close I actually got. So let's step right in. This is actually exactly the scene where Lilith is making her first appearance, and maybe I can catch exactly the moment what I want to draw. You have this very famous picture where God and human was holding their hands together, and here you have the exact opposite diabolic version of it. And you see the flesh, which is like transparent, and how she is glowing from the inside. And this is the picture we want to take, or we want to draw. So let's jump right in. Okay, let's go. So this took me about 30 hours, so it's one of my longest, if not the longest piece I have ever done. Normally I made my pieces so far on paper which is like half that size. Since I'm using watercolor here, I was using paper which has 300 gram per square meter. So it is quite heavy, and it is hot pressed. Hot pressed has a really even surface, since we are gonna use colored pencils later. This is quite significant, since when it's too rough, the paper, the surface, then you won't get a smooth look when you're applying the color. Hot pressed is more even, so it's less rough, and you get the color in every single corner and have a better coverage therefore. Right now I'm just using the pencil to make a rough sketch of Lilith. It is kind of made from a lower perspective. She is looking up somewhere. When you look at something from a lower perspective, it makes the object or the person look more majestic, more powerful compared to when you look down on it. And I was using tapes to glue the paper, or to tape the paper on the table, to at least to a certain extent prevent that it gets wavy, because it's wet on wet technique. So first I was making the paper wet so the color can bleed into each other and give it a smooth surface. But still, this is the first time I'm trying this wet on wet technique, and especially in the face you can see that the color coverage is not super even, which wasn't too big of a problem since we are going to apply another layer. But I'm sure one of my next pieces will be more watercolor based, not too much of color pencils. So I will have to improve my skills to get a more smooth look. This is quite essential if you're trying to paint skin with watercolor. It needs to look smooth. So the ground color was laid, and I'm observing at my reference where the highlights are, so I wasn't blocking in my colors where the highlights have been, since the white of the paper is already making this really nice highlights. Then when you once did already the watercolor, it's hard to get the white back in on it, and to still get the white back of the paper, I was using an electric eraser, because on this picture it seems that there was also some sort of light coming from below and is being reflected from the lower side of the horns. So I was using an electric eraser to bring some highlights back. And what is quite important is, as you can see, you have to, like in this case, on the top of the horns, the highlights have been the first thing which has been there, which is quite the opposite what maybe like an average person would think. Normally I would think that I'd start out with a medium color, and where the highlights are, I'm gonna put highlights on the medium color, and where the shadows are, I'm gonna put some darker colors. But since it's hard to get the white color back, I was starting out with the highlights mainly and working my way, building up layers and making it darker and darker. The horns are interestingly shaped. There are several of them on one side. They are splitting, they're going to the back and bending upwards, and they are having this structure where every single piece of the horn is reflecting the light differently. So it really took a lot of time observing the object to understand how the light is being reflected. I saw other art videos where they were rather saying like, I don't ask myself why there is the shadow right there. I'm not trying to rationalize it too much, because it would be too much of thinking, but I think it's essential to understand the theory of light and why a certain shadow is casted. Specifically, like in a next step, when you're trying to do your own pieces without a reference, then you need to have an understanding how light works. If you're all the way, all the time just copying things, then of course you don't need to know it. So I already made like some more progress, and just to know, like I'm speeding up by a factor of 64. Means roughly 1 minute in real time is 1 second in the video. 1 hour in real time is 1 minute in this video. So you get a feeling of like how long it took to shape out these horns. And right now several hours already have been passed, and I'm just still at the left half of the left horn, one of them. And so you really need to be patient. Don't get impatient, because you will lower the quality of your painting. And when the left side of the painting has high quality and the right side is like kind of then you can already guess that this won't be a masterpiece then. Therefore, to keep the motivation up, I also copied something here which other YouTubers were doing. Means normally I would think I'm building up layer by layer from the back to the front all over the picture. Maybe this is also a thing you normally do with watercolors. But when you do colored pencils, then you already can almost finish the whole picture at the place you're starting out. So, and this gives you a feeling like how the final piece will look like, and it keeps you going, you know, when you see like the first details are really hitting the nail on the head. It makes you go forward, it makes you stay patient, keep the level of quality up all the time. So right now I finished the upper horn, and you can see like the structure of the horn. Like when you're getting closer to the head, you have like two pieces of this horn, like two divisions, and it goes into one when you go farther away from the head, and you need to put that into the shading, of course. And the lower horn, which is like kind of close to the jawbone, it moves to the front. So as you can see, it moves out of the shadow which the upper horn casts, or which the face casts, and the top or the tip of the horn, the front, is having more highlights. So this is another example why it's so important to understand why light falls in a specific way. Here in this video I'm using the first time a different kind of lighting. I was switching it 2 times already. First I had a normal like yellow table light, then I had an LED white light which was very like focused, and I was annoyed that it is always in my way because it was really close to my face because it's small, standing on the table. And this time I have like LED light which is on a stand hanging over me, making diffuse light. But it's still, when you're building up a lot of layers with your color pencils, it makes the paper flat, and the more even the surface of the paper gets, the more shiny it gets, and so you see reflections here. And as you can see further on in the video, I was trying to change the angle of the camera, that it is not directly recording into the reflection of the light. This is like step-by-step lessons you take or you learn while you are building up your own channel. And as you can see, I already started out with the face, and again I had the ground color. I left out the white spaces for the very strong highlights, but I also blocked in the color for the cheekbones. So I was using a white colored pencil to kind of put pressure on the ground color and try to create some highlights of the cheek and jawbone. But this white, for example, is not perfect. It's way less white than it's than the color of the paper is. So also again at the very end of the painting, I was trying to use another gadget to put more of the white onto those highlights. Of course you will see a whole list of materials I used in the description. And this picture used a lot of red-violet color, so you can see my pencil is getting smaller and smaller, and that also means that it gets harder to to draw or to paint. And that's also why during the process I was ordering a new one to not to run out of colors. But there's also a very nice gadget you can use. You will also see in this video. I was like, when the colored pencil gets too small, you can just put it. It's like a mounting for colored pencils, and you can really use it to almost nothing until it disappears. So I'm starting out of on the left side of the face, and if you really pay attention, the character, it's interesting because you gotta know that Lilith has two different eye colors. It's gray and blue, and I was just observing the reference, and I was just drawing it how I saw it, and like my girlfriend was saying, like, why is the one eye color different than the other one? And I was like, this is how I thought, like maybe it's the light which falls into the eye more on the one side than to the other. But actually it turned out, I found out that Lilith really has two different eye colors. But in some of the other videos I already said, like, you don't have to create a perfect copy of it. That's your version of the piece you're drawing, so don't get too crazy and clingy about the original. So here is the thing I was nervous about. It's like, colored pencils are not so shiny, brilliant, like, let's say, Tombow brush pens, or if you're painting digitally. So, but the reference, the original, was having this red shine from within. The flesh was almost transparent. You can see the anatomy of the skull. You could see the spine behind the throat. And I was really curious if I will kind of catch this glow and get the anatomy without making it look like it's like face paint or something like that. So I think what helped the most is to really pay attention on like how the red color fades into the violet ones, and that you have highlights which is going above both areas. So this highlight, which goes above both, is kind of showing that there is another layer of skin in the front, which is covering this shine. Here you see, this is the spine, the elements of the spine you can see. As I saw it in the introduction, if you are looking in this YouTube trailer, you will find out, like, you will exactly see what I mean with the shine from within. Here you already, if you pay attention, I'm using already this mount for the little violet pencil, because it was already getting too small. And she was having this texture on her forehead, and I tried to mimic it in my picture. And it was always a combination of the electric eraser, black, and this red-violet pencil. The light kind of comes from the right side, more from the right than from the left, so you have more white spots on the right side than on the left side. And it's always astonishing that you only need like few steps, few colors to already create a really realistic look. In this case, it's only 3 pencils. It's black, red, violet, and this reddish pencil. And just by applying pressure, you create this nice texture, which really makes it look so plastic. details on the forehead. And like at this stage, when you already see how the whole painting is turning out, you don't lose motivation. You're obsessed by the picture. I was like, even like in the morning when I was going to work, I was getting up, and before I left the house, I was going back to my picture one time and looking at it, and I was already looking forward after work to sit back at my table and continue it, because I wanted it to be finished, of course. So when you pay attention, when the red shine is kind of showing where the anatomy is, you have those holes where the eyeballs are in. The red is kind of stopping where those eyeball holes are. You can see, like, when you follow the skull to the teeth, how the shading is getting a little bit more complex. You have like different forms which are in the end leading to your upper jaw or your upper teeth. When you watch the trailer, you see that the story behind it is she was kind of banned into the void, and was held captured there, and a summoning or something like that must be done, and it was looking like she was going through a layer of blood and flesh. How she were able to come back from the void into back to reality, and this was the moment where she first stand up when she was coming back from the void, and this layer of flesh was kind of falling on her neck like it is a coat, and this is what you're having here. So everything, like the whole picture, is held in these red-violet tones. Only her eye, one eye is in blue, the other one like bluish gray. They're making the contrast to it, so it's really giving this diabolic sense of a creature out of hell. And again, leaving white spaces out is like painting with white color. It gives the, even there is no color, it gives it such a nice form. So at this time I was almost completely done with the face, and I had to start out with the right half of the horn. You can see like her cheekbones are kind of changing into those thorns which are pointing at her horns. Which gives it a really dangerous look. Same thing with let me call it eyebrows, which are so pointy and makes it look really dangerous. And on the right side you can see the ear a little bit better. And the ear is kind of disappearing behind those thorns and under the horn. That's why it's getting darker again and gives a sharp contrast to the light which falls on her, the side of her face. What's also difficult is that the color of the horns are changing, and on the top you have like this gray, yellowish, beige tone, and it changes when you go further down to this red-violet, reddish tone until you reach the lower horn again, which reaches out of the shadow and goes back into this beige tone. So here now I changed the camera perspective and we have less reflections, and also you can see the details a little bit better. Again, you need to observe from where the light comes, where you have the light source, where you have the darkest shadow, and this is very essential to give it a three-dimensional look. And what was also difficult to repeat in the painting is that here the step-by-step process is as following. You have the ground color of the watercolor, then you use this red-violet color to just block in the color, and then you apply more and more pressure with the same pencil to already give the first impressions of forms, and you make even darker shadows than with black. So, but that's not all, because Lilith also on the highlights, it's kind of turning more into red. So you will also see in a couple of seconds or minutes that I will add to the highlights some red. It's always the same procedure all the time. Here, blocking in the color, applying pressure, making darker shadows with black, and that's it. Blocking in the color. Now I'm doing something else. Blocking in the color, making darker shadows, blocking in the color, darker shadows, blocking in the color, and darker shadows. It's always the same thing. I was drawing like very slightly to get the grid of the horns into my mind. Like I have to picture every single section, how it was like forming or shaping on the horns. And again, I didn't copy every single section. It would be hard to compose everything in a perfect manner so it will be a perfect copy. It doesn't have to be. Once you understand how it works, you can do your own segments. You can do your own. And it's still, because nobody pays attention, nobody will say, oh, that's different now. No. Here you already see that I'm using the red colored pencil sometimes to do the highlights. And I wasn't finishing all the details until the ground because I kind of like the effect that also the color kind of fades out to the outside of the paper. Yeah, so this side of the horn is kind of low and like directed to the neck of Lilith. It's supposed to be very dark because it's difficult for the light to fall into this corner. So you will again see that I will work my way to the darker colors step by step. But it's always easier to get the shape darker. The more and more pressure you apply, the darker you go with the pencils. There you can always, it seems like you can always apply another layer. There is also an end, but you can do a lot of layers which go darker and darker. To go brighter, I don't think you can apply more than maybe 2 or 3 layers. That's that would be very difficult. So plan your highlights in advance. This one was also difficult because here a little bit more light was falling on the lower horn compared to the left side, and it was showing the structure of the horn, and it had a different reflection, and it was kind of shining reddish from below. Either there is light coming from below, or it is the reflection again of this flesh which is hanging around her. Blocking in the ground color, making it darker. Then I made a grid to understand where those, I call them stairs, go. And then of course, because these brighter spots now, they go into the inside, so they have to be darker. They have to be darker than the surrounding because it's more difficult for the light to go there. And like I was doing more and more iterations, and it was still not dark enough for me, so I was following up, doing it darker again, and I need to find the nice, some kind of bleeding or fading into the bright color again, coming out of the dark into the bright, so you don't have like this super sharp corner. Here again, using the electric eraser to get rid of the watercolor. You can erase watercolor with an electric eraser. I was also, to give the horn more structure, I was making those bright spots with an electric eraser. Yeah, you can also remove layers of colored pencils with an electric eraser. Just pay attention that you use a different piece of paper to make the surface of the eraser clean again, otherwise you will, like, the eraser will paint, you know. So here I was already really excited to finish it. This was the last sprint, but still, like, some of the highlights are missing. And I will apply it's so-called Pit Artist pen from Faber-Castell, and it is white, and there you can put new highlights on already layers of color pencils. Here. First I was trying to use watercolor, but this was more difficult. This was way more easy to use this one. Yeah. And that's it. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned. Auf Wiedersehen.